where does this bedding go at the end? Where does this bedding end up at the end? If it ends up in the landfill, this could leach out into the drinking water. So we need to protect everybody involved. And I love the picture of this rabbit who's either sneezing or getting ready to bite. So obviously, if they have, say, influenza or coronavirus in their respiratory tract, we need to figure out where this is going to go and then contain it so it doesn't go to the wrong place. Okay, so that makes sense. Safety first. Okay, so I know on various news broadcasts, we've seen various pictures of our old friend here, coronavirus. So ABSL3, Animal Biosafety Level 3. What is this? So you guys I shouldn't say probably, but I'll say that there's different levels of biosafety and animal biosafety. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each one builds upon the practices, procedures, containment equipment, and facility requirements of the one before. So 1 is the most basic, 2 builds on 1, 3 builds on 2, and 4 builds on 3. So they kind of go up in order. And so level 3 builds on the practices, equipment, and everything of 2. And 2 already has pages and pages and pages of these. And if I were to go through all these, we'd be here all afternoon. So I'm not going to bore you with all that. And if you wanted to, you could read your handy BMBL at night, put yourself to sleep, and you'd have all those. So I'm going to go through kind of a little bit what constitutes 3, but keep in mind that there's all these things at 2, which we already have at UCLA, that is on top of those. Okay. And again, these ABSL3 is required for agents that present a potential for aerosol transmission, particularly, and agents causing a serious or potentially lethal disease, like SARS-CoV-2, for which there's no current vaccine or treatment. And indeed, sometimes these agents will get bumped up to BSL or ABSL level 4. And I have seen some pictures of researchers working with SARS-CoV-2 in China and some other areas, and they're actually working with it under ABSL or BSL level 4 conditions rather than 3. I don't know if that's just out of an abundance of caution, but I have seen them using like the whole, we call that like the astronaut suits, the whole BSL level 4 suits. But here in the US, it's supposed to be a 3. So when you look at the BMBL, it talks about different, like 3 different categories of what you need to do as far as for these different levels. They divide it into different things. And the first thing is called the different practices you need to do at each level. So for ABSL 3 areas, these are the practices you need to do. You need to have controlled access, decontamination of clothing before laundering. So if you're wearing like a lab coat, you need to decontaminate it before you wash it. The cages need to be decontaminated before the bedding is removed. And then they talk about foot baths. And that's if you have like large animals, so you're walking into and out of their stalls or their pens. Obviously, you're not walking into and out of a mouse cage, so you wouldn't need a foot bath in that kind of an area. But those are the kinds of practices. So, for example, you would need a key card access for facilities, so nobody could get in that doesn't have all the training and stuff they need. So that's an example of that. And obviously, at UCLA, we have the ability for all of these. Or we use disposable clothing and PPE, personal protective equipment, so we could do that in these areas. And we also use disposable caging in what we propose as ABSL 3 areas. So we don't need to worry about decontaminating cages before the bedding is removed or the cages are removed because we use disposable. So we would fit everything for the practices. We don't have to worry about that. So we would fit that for ABSL 3, no problem. The second category they talk about is primary barriers and safety equipment. That's the second category in the BMBL. So they talk about you need to have all the ABSL2 equipment plus this. So you need containment equipment for housing your animals and cage dumping activities. You need to have biosafety cabinets that are class 1, 2, or 3, and that just talks about how the cabinets work. So that if you're doing something to the animals, like injecting them or you've euthanized them and now you're collecting tissues, they have to be done inside those hoods. So that if you're doing anything that might create an aerosol, so that stuff may be breathed in, that it's contained in that cabinet, in that safe area. And then again, the PPE, personal protective equipment, including appropriate respiratory protection, so you're not breathing anything in. That's the safety equipment you need to have. And here's just a picture of somebody changing a cage in a biosafety cabinet, and they're wearing the proper PPE for an aerosol hazard. This device is either a PAPR, a personal air purifying respirator, or a CAPR, which is another type of it. I think it's a PAPR. And these are really nice because they have their own little fans inside. So this is totally contained, and the fan blows air over your face, and they don't fog up, which is kind of nice. These are very handy. So nice level PPE, totally covered, and besides the fact this is also in a cabinet, so it's going to protect the mice, and the wearer is protected as well. So as far as these things, again, whoops, sorry. UCLA, again, we can purchase the correct type of caging and racks for each of these species in these areas. We have class 2 biosafety cabinets. We don't have any class 3s. I don't know if anybody's familiar with biosafety cabinets, but those are the kinds with the gloves. So you put your hands in and manipulate them and then take them back out. Those are the biosafety class 3s. And again, we can purchase all the PPE for risk assessments and use them as we need to. So there's no issues with that as far as having an ABSL3 space at UCLA. We can do all of that stuff. Now the third thing that the ABSL3 is required to have by BMBL are certain facility requirements. Now's where it starts to get sticky because it requires all of these things. Physical separation from access corridors. So they don't want just Joe Blow public walking down the corridor and then boom, even if they don't have access, like someone could swipe a card, walk in, and then they could either see into this area or potentially piggyback somebody else in and be directly in this area. No access from a public corridor. Self-closing double door access as well. Seal penetrations, the whole lab needs to be sealed. Okay, all around the pipes, all around everything, it all needs to be sealed. As well as the windows. Now, most of these labs don't have windows, but again, everything needs to be totally sealed. You need to have an autoclave within the facility, and that's mostly for decontamination of waste going out. But again, autoclave within the facility, right? And it's usually pretty big. An entry through either an anteroom or an airlock type situation. So again, off a main corridor, and you're going into a small room before you go into the main room itself. And not something you can just easily retrofit some kind of area to. That has to be designed. Negative airflow into animal and procedure rooms. Again, to try to keep any contamination kind of sucked into the room. So if you open the door, things aren't going to blow out. Things have to keep, the airflow has to be such so that things are contained in. And usually that's not too much of a problem. We can alter airflow, but keeping it that way and having what's the word I want? Reliable heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC, and flows so that it never goes out, and there's redundancy so that if it does go out, it doesn't become positive. That's something that's really difficult to do, especially in older buildings. And then sinks near the exit of every animal or procedure room. Again, something you can retrofit, that tends to be expensive, and it can be difficult to do. So then the design and the operational procedures have to be documented, how you're putting all this in place. And it's got to be tested before use and then every year that everything is working properly. So it's very high maintenance and everything has got to be done. And again, a lot of this testing has to be done. Federal inspectors come in to test this stuff. So I just want to show you, I pulled this off the internet. This is actually labeled as a BSL2 research area with animal holding rooms, that's what AHR is, and procedure rooms. But this could easily be a BSL3 or ABSL3 suite. But you see there's no entry into the animal rooms from the outside corridor. There's entry through these kind of these ante rooms. This is actually a shower-in area. So you would come in, you would shower, then you gown up, go through an airlock, and then into the BSL2 or 3 space and into the animal rooms themselves. So this just gives you an idea of how complicated this type of space is. So it's not really easy. Those of you who work with animals and seen kind of our regular space, it's nowhere near this complicated. Okay, this is really complicated to be able to retrofit what we have now into. So it's this complicated combination that we don't have right now at UCLA, especially something we're talking about an ante-room before you get into an animal room that's not on a common corridor. We really don't have this at UCLA right now. And to try to retrofit something would be extremely expensive. We're talking millions of dollars right now. So right now, how is ABSL3 work being done at UCLA? Short answer, right now, it really isn't, because we don't have these kind of facilities in place. The long answer, there's one pilot study that's been done in the BSL3 laboratory. And that was done through special permission by the High Containment Use Committee. They're the ones that oversee the BSL3 laboratory. The Animal Research Committee, ARC, that's the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. They're the ones that approve all the animal research work at UCLA. So they reviewed it and they approved it. And the Institutional Biosafety Committee, the IBC, they're the ones that approved all the hazardous work. So all three of those groups had to get together with the veterinarians, primarily me, to go through all this stuff, go through all these SOPs to get this one little pilot study approved. It was a very small study, just a few nights. It was short term, and they were actually housed in the biosafety cabinet of that high containment BSL3 laboratory. Very strict oversight by veterinarians, lots of SOPs and rules in place about how all this stuff was going to work, because this wasn't really an approved animal housing area. So they had to put in extra SOPs, and we had to be watching animals every day. So it was really very complicated. Now, good news is, Dlam, we have plans to renovate the 8th floor of CHS to include an ABSL housing area and procedure rooms. Yay! Date for completion? Big question marks, because we're still in the planning stages right now. And we're still planning, we're still kind of fighting for it. So if there is interest in this, it would be great to let your department chairs know, deans know, vice chancellor for research know, because one of the things we need to do is show that, hey, there is a big push for this. Because right now, anybody who wants to do BSL3 work, there is a facility at UC Irvine where people go. I think there's one at either Colorado State or UC Colorado. So they have to farm it out there to be able to do the work. They can't do it on campus because there's no real facility for it. So we're trying to argue that we're losing all this potential research here because we don't have the facilities for it. And just an example that the rooms themselves are not that complicated. You know, here's the ventilated cages that are completely sealed, biosafety cabinet, that's all you really need in the room. It's all the other stuff outside. You know, the ante-room, another place to gown, off the main corridors, there's all these other things that we need to have in place around the rooms that makes it so complicated. So in a nutshell, that's really it. So that's what I have prepared for today. And if we like, we can have questions.
Great, thank you, Joanne. We can take questions either through the chat, or anyone would like to show their face and ask a question in person.
Or not show their face and unmute and ask questions. That would be fun. I know I'm usually home in my pajamas, so I don't show my face when I'm at home.
Okay, first question from Shimon Weiss.
Yeah, what about the BSL3 facilities of years ago at CNSI? Good question. That is the BSL3 laboratory. Same with the one in BSRB. That's a laboratory space. There's no animal housing space for that. So that's the same thing that happened here. They got permission to house the animals for 1 week in the biosafety cabinet in the laboratory. But for animal housing space, we don't have that. So that's the difference. Yeah.
Great.
I see Gay, she turned on her face.
Yes. Yeah, I think Gay might have a question.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi.
Thank you for presenting today. It was it's very interesting. So this is just a question about the air handling. With the negative pressure, is that just the same as BSL2 currently is, or is there something different about it?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. What they want to see is that with the negative pressure, they also want to see if it fails, it's going to fail with it in negative. And a lot of, especially in our older buildings, if it fails, well, it just fails and it goes positive, which is a concern that they've shown with what we have now in what we have as the TB room. Because sometimes when that's failed, it's failed positive and we just chase everybody out and say don't work in there. And so that's been a real concern. So if and when we build our real facility, we're going to have some kind of redundancy in there. And so such that if it fails, it's failing negative and it will not go positive. So that's been a concern.
And I think, it sounds certainly like this would be much more expensive, of course, not just to create, but to run. Has any thought been given into what the costs to investigators would be relative to, let's say, the BSL-2 or immune deficiency costs?
I don't know if we've gone down as far to work out what the per diem would be. That would be more a question for Dr. Goodwin, because I know they've worked out, tried to figure out how much it would cost to build the BSL-3 facility itself, but I don't know if we've worked out if that would be reflected in the per diem, or if it would just be the school would invest in the BSL-3, and then the per diem would just be how much it would cost to keep a cage in there. I don't know, honestly. That part's above my pay grade.
Great. I have a question from the chat. I apologize if I don't get your name right. This is from Ikotun Aluwatayo. Is there a way for Dlam to have a centralized Google Doc or something where they can compile a centralized list of researchers interested in ABSL-3?
I don't know. I know we don't usually share things on Google because it's not secure, but I would think if you are interested in the BSL-3 stuff, you could either email me, my email is at the beginning of this presentation, or email Dr. Goodwin, who's the head of our department, because we're just trying to get an idea now who's interested in it, so we can present that to the vice dean for research. So as we're trying to get this approved and move forward with this, we can give them an idea of how much research would be done in there, and of course how much money that would bring in, because of course that's the bottom line for UCLA of how much research and research dollars that would bring in.
Great. I think, do we have another question maybe from Martin? But now he's on the phone. Any other questions? Maybe Bridget has a question.
I have a question. Thanks, Joanne, for giving us an update on what's really available or not on campus.
Yeah.
So I'm presuming that there are going to be more investigators who are going to want to make use of the BSL-3 facilities for short-term experiments, just like you did that exception before. And I'm wondering how Dlam feels about doing more of those kinds of experiments moving forward in these BSL-3 high containment facilities that we have right now.
I think Dlam would be okay with it. It's the High Containment Use Committee that's kind of the first hurdle, because they're the one that really oversees the BSL-3 laboratory. So they would be the first one to say yay or nay as to whether they want to do it or not.
So Joanne, can I jump in here?
Yeah, Jerry.
This is Jerry. Hi, how are you? Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
To answer Bridget's question, given I direct the High Containment Use Committee,
Yeah.
there are 4 hoods in the BSL-3. If there's any animals in there, they have to go in one of the hoods, and it takes out 25% of the capacity of the BSL-3. Consequently, the committee is not very favorable to do animal experiments in there because it takes out a major component of the facility. So one can submit, and we will certainly consider applications, but just bear that in mind that the current feeling is we need the space for in vitro studies as well. So it's very competitive for space.
Thanks, Jerry. And is there another facility in CNSI in addition to BSRB? Are there 2 BSL-3 facilities on campus?
Yeah, one is in MRL with Marcus Horowitz. That is going to be renovated pretty quickly. So that's not available. The one, an earlier question came in about the CNSI. that was originally set up as a BL3, but never was properly functioning as a BSL3 and has now been recommissioned for something else. So the only facility that's actually of use is the one in BSRB. And again, that's very limited in terms of space for animal housing. And it is really not an animal facility, as Joanne mentioned. So the best advice right now is find collaborators off campus if you want to do an experiment. It's going to be more than 1 or 2 cages. And I also think a couple of facilities were mentioned, but I think there are facilities at UC Davis also that can handle BSL3 animals.
Joanne, on that point, is there any way that you could find for everybody how to contact the people, what people to contact at UCI, UC Davis, and what their capacity is?
I can try to get that information for you guys, especially UC Irvine, because my understanding was that was supposed to be a regional BSL3, because our director, Jeff Goodwin, used to work there, used to be the director there. So I can try to get the contact information. And then I guess
there's quite a bit of demand probably that they're getting.
Yeah, I would think so.
Whether it's feasible or not.
So I can try to get that from, and then Melody or somebody maybe could send it to you all if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. We can have
Okay.
Leah distribute that information.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Just following up on Teo's point from earlier about trying to find people on campus who are interested in doing this kind of work and finding a central place for people to be able to sign up for that. I think that's something that we may be able to do through our committee. And I think what we'll do is put our heads together and maybe send out an email for anybody who's interested in doing BSL3 animal work to get in touch with us. So we'll probably put together some sort of Google Doc or something that people could come to a central place to sign up for that as something that they would be interested in doing in the future.
Yeah, that would be good if we could get an idea of that again, so we could get support and push it upward so we could get this facility built for you guys. That would be great. Thank you.
And Joanne, I was curious if for the building of the facility on the 8th floor of CHS, how long would it take actually for the construction of the room or the facility?
I mean, that's a good question. We're moving forward right now with trying to design and refurbish 8th floor. We're hoping to have it done, like in a year or two. But I know that space is special, so I don't know if that would take longer because it's a specialized space. So I'm not sure. Again, I'm not really involved in the renovation, so I'm not sure what the target dates are to have that finished.
And then just to clarify, Joanne, so there's no current DLAM space on campus that could be refurbished to fit these requirements?
There is no plans right now to do that.
But is there something that you think that could be refurbished, which would be obviously a quicker timeline than the 1 to 2, which is probably going to be more like 3 years for the 8th floor of CHS?
I don't believe there are any plans to do that. Again, that would be Dr. Goodwin's area to approach him with that.
And is there a definite commitment to create this space on the 8th floor, or are you still waiting for that?
Dlam wants to do it, but as far as, we need to get approval from higher ups as far as convincing them that yes, there is enough investigator interest to do this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we need to get the commitment from.
So hi, it's Jerry again. I would suggest if people are interested, please let the administration know that you're interested, because I think it's really important. I personally would love to see one of these facilities being set up here, but we need to have a groundswell to get the administration on board.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Barbara Dillon. I'm the director of the High Containment Labs. I wanted you to know that we have designed this facility. I've designed this facility with designers, and I presented it to leadership in January. We're waiting for their commitment to funding. It's really there, it's in their hands, and Jeff Goodwin assured me that he would be pushing it forward. But, you know, as Joanne said, we need as many people to write and express their need for this facility, because it is an expensive facility. I anticipate that once we got commitment, it would probably take 2 years to build it and to get it built and commissioned, because these are highly engineered facilities. So that's all we really need, is that push to get the funding commitment.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara, for jumping in. And I guess I also want to mention that, I mean, to have this facility on campus will be really beneficial for any BSL-3 pathogen to work. And I'm sure that even after COVID,
Oh yeah.
hopefully one day COVID will be over, but seems like we're in it for the long haul. Therefore, I think it will be great to have this. But I think for a lot of the other pathogens that we study, it will be great to have an animal BSL-3 facility.
So it probably makes sense for our committee to perhaps take the lead on this, and we'll figure out a way to sort of send things out. We will remind you at these seminars and so on. So rather than sort of sending emails to various places, perhaps if you could send them to Bridget and Melody, because you're the face of our committee, and Joanne, if you could feed the information back to us on what the alternative places are, because that's part of the
Yeah, I think UC Irvine, I don't know about the UC Davis one, but I can look into that. But UC Irvine is close. And like I said, I understand from Jeff Goodwin, it was built as a regional facility. So I'll try and get that information to you guys. So that would be good.
And Gay, to follow up, I think it's fine to email Melody and I if you're interested in this, and we can add you to a list. But what we'll also do is email, you know, very widely. Same people who get the seminar series invitation will also be emailed, and we'll have a Google Doc so that people can sign up on there as well. So that way we can make sure that we capture as many people as possible who are interested.
And I guess to add to that, I just sent a message to everyone. For those of you that missed the beginning of the seminar today, I made a few announcements, including the link for basically all NIH COVID-related funding opportunities, and also Bridget and my email addresses if you want to reach out about potential topics for future seminars and discussions, and also your interest in animal BSL-3.
And I'd just like to add, there's another recent funding announcement that's coming through. I think it's called Fast Track. It came through a lot of emails yesterday. Really urge people to take a look at that. It's a very fast turnaround. I think it's sort of philanthropic money that's being put into this. And so I think it's a 14-day turnaround for funding decisions.
Wow. Wow.
Great. And I guess if there are no more questions, we want to thank Joanne for talking to us today. We feel more informed after this. I guess, yeah, please reach out to Bridget and me for any suggestions for topics and any questions about, I guess, interest in BSL-3. So that's our pitch.
Sounds good.
Great. Awesome. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you next week. Or I don't know if there's a seminar. Anyways, wait for the seminar. I'm not sure we have a seminar next week, but we'll see. All right.
Thank you guys very much.
Joanne. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.